Welcome to the Economics Brief. Today's episode is called The Analyst and Decision Maker Disconnect. Brought to you by Analysts in the Americas for Strategic Business Intelligence. Disclaimer. This is an unclassified brief for educational purposes only. This episode discusses analysis, decision-making, institutional constraints, and business judgment. This is not financial advice, nor investments, advice, or recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any securities. The purpose is to explain why good analysis often fails to shape action, even when the analysis is correct. This episode is adapted from the Institution of America's article, The Analyst and the Decision Maker Disconnect. Bluff. Executive Summary. Good analysis often gets ignored, softened, or filed away because analysts and decision makers operate under different pressures. The analyst is usually trying to be accurate, sourced, defensible, and methodically sound. The decision maker has to act inside limits that may not appear in the request or in the request for information, RFI. Timing, authority, client pressure, career risk, exposure to loss, or the cost of moving too early are influencers to a decision maker. When those constraints aren't shared, analysis can be correct and still fail to influence action. So the remedy is not to just scream louder with your analysis. It's better tasking. Decision makers need to disclose the opening constraints before the analysis begins, as politically hard as that may be. And the analysts need to separate what's true from what can actually be acted on inside the decision window. And now we begin. Welcome to the Economics Brief, brought to you by the Institution of the Americas for Strategic Business Analysis. I'm your host, advisor, and analyst, Rick Alonso. Today's brief is about a common institutional failure, the gap between the analyst and the decision maker. Most organizations assume analysis and decision-making belong in the same process. On paper, they do, and in practice, they often run on different railroad tracks. The analyst is usually rewarded for producing work that can survive review. The report needs evidence, logic, and sourcing. It also needs discipline because it also needs to be defensible. The decision maker is operating under different constraints and standard. They have to make a move that can survive the current environment. That environment may include a board meeting, a client mandate, a quarterly review, legal limit, or reputational concerns. And, of course, we all know the risk of losing money before an organization is ready to accept the reason why. And because of those differences, the disconnect exists. The analyst may answer the evidence question. However, the decision maker may be trapped inside the action question. They're related, but they're not the same. A report could be accurate and still fail because it does not explain what the decision maker can do with the assessments. As we like to say, it doesn't really have a so what that's relevant to the decision maker. And that's how good analysis gets filed away. It explains the issue, but it doesn't enter the decision. The failure usually appears late after the report has already been written, but the real problem starts earlier. It starts at the tasking point. If the decision maker does not disclose the real constraints, the analyst is solving an incomplete problem. The analyst may not know the time horizon. They may not know what actions are currently available. They may not know what level of loss the institution can tolerate, or whether a client's committee, regulator, family member, partner, or board is truly shaping the final decision. So the analyst writes toward reality. The decision maker has to act within the constraints. When those two don't meet, the product loses force. This does not mean the decision maker is ignoring the analyst. It may mean that the analyst answered a question that was too clean for the real environment. The artificial intelligence investment cycle gives a useful example. An analyst may look at AI stocks and say the valuations are stretched, the future return is uncertain or impossible, and the market pricing is more profitable than the companies have proven. This may be a sound assessment, but, for example, the portfolio manager faces another question. Can I afford to underweigh artificial intelligence while the market keeps rewarding AI exposure? That's a different problem. The analyst is asking, what does the evidence support? However, the decision maker is asking, what can I survive doing now? A useful product has to hold both questions at the same time without confusing them. The same issue appears in the TOTO case, discussed in the source article. TOTO, spelled T-O-T-O, is widely known for bathroom fixtures and its washlet bidet toilet line. But the company also has exposure to precision ceramic components used in semiconductor manufacturing. That matters because investors began to view part of the business through the lens of AI infrastructure. That doesn't make the company fake, because the business exposure is real, in a sense. But the pricing question is separate. Did the market discover a real profit engine that has been underappreciated? The dream in a free market economy? Or did the AI narrative cause investors to reprice the company faster than the earnings case it could support? Those are different questions. The analyst needs to test the business. The decision maker also has to manage the timing. If the price is moving and the clients are asking about exposure in a risk sense, waiting for perfect clarity may carry its own costs. And that is a disconnect. Because the analyst may be right about the uncertainty, especially an evaluation of a toilet company. The decision maker may still have to act because the decision window is moving. This is why analysis has to separate the structural case from the timing case. The structural case asks what is happening and why. The timing case asks when the action matters. The action case asks what can be done under the actual constraints. If those three are compressed into one recommendation, the product, the intelligence product or the analytical product, becomes harder to use. And this applies far beyond markets. A business owner may ask to open a second location. The analyst may study demand, competitors, rents, staffing, and consumer behavior. But the owner may also be dealing with a lease deadline, family pressure, debt timing, or the fear the competitor will take the location first. If those pressures stay hidden, the analyst may recommend patience, while the owner is already operating inside a commitment. In other words, they've already made up their mind. A restaurant may ask whether to expand delivery. The demand may be there, but the real constraint may be the kitchen capacity, the platform fees, packaging costs, margin leakage. If the analysis only answers the demand question, it may recommend activity that does not improve the business. And there's the pattern. The analyst answers the viable question, while the decision maker acts on hidden constraints. then the institution calls it a communication problem. It is usually a tasking problem. And the remedy is simple. It doesn't mean easy because it requires discipline. Before commissioning analysis, the decision maker should explain the decision. What action is being considered? Who owns it? What is the time horizon? And what actions are off the table? What level of loss or delay can be tolerated? And what evidence would change the current position? The analyst should then write to that decision environment. That does not mean telling the decision maker what they want to hear, although that does happen a lot. It means make the product usable. A good analytical product should separate what is structurally true from what can be acted on now. It should explain what changes the judgment. It should identify the point where waiting becomes more costly than acting. And it should make the ownership clear. Analyst comment. The analyst and the decision maker disconnect is best understood as a constraint problem. Analysts create value by clarifying conditions, mechanisms, risks, implications. Decision makers create value by acting inside limits. When those limits are not shared, analysis may remain accurate but lose influence. The answer is not stronger wording or better PowerPoints. It's a better alignment before the work begins. The decision maker owns the constraint disclosure. The analyst owns the conversion of it. Without that exchange, institutions will keep producing reports that will survive review and the decisions that survive the moment, while the connection between the two remain weak and nearly disjointed. 3 things close. Condition. Analysis and decision-making often operate under different pressures. Analysts assess reality. Decision-makers act inside constraints. Next action. Before writing or commissioning analysis or a request for information, define the decision, owner, timing, available options, unavailable options, acceptable exposure, and the evidence that would change the position or impact it. Owner. The decision maker makes the constraints. The analyst owns the translation of those constraints into usable strategic business intelligence. In closing, this has been the Rickonomics Brief, brought to you by the Institution of the Americas for Strategic Business Intelligence. I am Rick Alonso. Good analysis is not enough if it can't reach the decision. The work has to answer reality. It also has to fit the decision window. And that is where intelligence becomes useful. Until the next brief, may wisdom guide your decisions, may faith steady your steps, and may peace be with you.